At Eternity's Gate 2018 film about Vincent van Gogh was released late last year to early this year, depending on the country, and after a delay, it finally came to the Polish theaters. The film stars Willem Dafoe, Rupert Friend, Oscar Isaac, and Mads Mikkelsen. So we meet Vincent van Gogh, post-impressionist painter, perhaps one of the most famous and influential in the history of art, in Paris, where he is unsuccessfully trying to make a living from painting. He is unhappy though because of the dreary atmosphere of the city and leaves to the south of France to work on his art. There he begins to paint nature mostly, living still thanks to his brother's financial support, still remaining mostly unknown and ignored. We spend time with him and stay with him throughout his time in Arles, his stay in a psychiatric hospital later on, and then finally his last days again in the French countryside. So the first and most important thing is that it is not a movie about Van Gogh the painter and his works primarily. It is above all else a movie about Van Gogh the person, about letting the audience get in his shoes, see the world as he did, experience his suffering. Suffering because Van Gogh had serious mental issues, violent episodes of running around and shouting, getting into fights, cutting his own ear even. He had lots of trouble with this kind of behavior, and as he states in the film, he never even remembers that. And that is reflected by the film's narrative structure. We never actually see Vincent have one of those episodes truly. We never see him drink heavily, which he supposedly did. We'll instead have a prolonged sequence of Vincent walking around the countryside painting. There will be piano music, sunlight, sweeping camera movements for minutes and minutes, and then it will abruptly cut to black and silence, and we'll have Vincent's voiceover explaining that something terrible happened to him once again. And I think that works really well to really make us feel as helpless and vulnerable as Van Gogh himself. We, like him, are confused by what's happening and kind of wish that we could stay forever in that happy mindscape of just painting pictures filled with sunlight. This narrative structure is helped in great way by the way the film is shot, by the cinematography. Most of the film is shot in extreme close-ups, especially of the faces of the characters, by handheld cameras, but also often with long, continuous shots. There are a few shots that made me think of Terrence Malick's movies, actually. But even when Vincent is exploring the fields and forests and hills, it would have been tempting to show us more of the wide shots of the scenery, but the camera is always kept close to the central character, to his face, always tethered to him, so to speak. We stay with him in this intimate relationship that he himself had with the nature that he painted. And I think that's the perfect word to describe the film, by the way, intimate. Intimate and quiet. And also melancholic and sad, to be sure, despite the beautiful colors and lively palette of the film and of the paintings presented. There is this permeating atmosphere of sorrow. We constantly feel the shadow of the mental illness that Vincent is forced to live with. Weirdly enough, the movie made me think of Joker with Joaquin Phoenix that came out earlier this year. That movie is also examining mental illness in great detail, even though the two movies are polar opposites of one another in terms of tone. Where Joker is depressing and chilling and raw, At Eternity's Gate is more melancholic, I'd say. It is sad, to be sure, but it manages to maintain a certain amount of fleeting beauty in those moments where Vincent is fine, painting or talking to his friends. What I also need to highlight is Willem Dafoe's performance. Despite the fact that he is much older than Van Gogh was at the time, almost 25 years older in fact, he is definitely convincing in the role. He brings a lot of delicacy and vulnerability to the performance. At times you almost think of Vincent as a scared child, just wanting to paint and seeking no trouble. And of course his tragedy being that that's impossible, that the trouble that he is not seeking, he ends up getting into most often as a result of his own unstable mind. The final thing that I wanted to say was that because of the film focuses on the last years of Vincent's life and is very personal and in some ways disconnected from his works, I think it makes for a fantastic companion piece to Loving Vincent, the animated film from 2017. That one was told from the perspective of Theo, his brother, and took place after Vincent's tragic death, and was also animated to make each and every frame look like a Van Gogh painting. So not only is the angle of the story different in both films, it also has this one also has a completely different method of telling the story. So all in all, I thought At Eternity's Gate was a wonderful film, a character study mixed with an examination of mental illness that also seamlessly manages to be a touching celebration of the life of Vincent van Gogh.